comforts of home take on deeper meaning for Idaho's one and only caveman. Plus, the rush for gold lives on as pint-sized prospectors get the fever. And the original gold rush is forever preserved.
Hello and welcome to Exploring Idaho from what was once the boomtown of the Northwest. Idaho City has a fascinating history. Back in 1862, gold fever struck here, and overnight the town was bursting with prospectors. Men came from across the country with hopes of striking it rich. They panned, sluiced, dredged, and dug, all in the search of that precious yellow metal. Most miners found only hard work and modest rewards. But there was big business in supplying the miners, and Idaho City thrived. At its height, Idaho City had 250 business houses, including 15 restaurants, 24 carpenter shops, and 5 drugstores. Miners had a reputation for drinking, and there were plenty of places for it in Idaho City. In a town of 6,000 people, there were 35 saloons. You can still kick up your heels at one of the restored saloons here on Main Street in Idaho City. And of course, you can still try your hand panning for gold. But be warned, if you spot color in your pan, you could come down with a serious case of gold fever.
Gold fever is real. It's a real thing. And I know it. My wife knows it. Let's see if we can find some gold here. A lot of people will ask, well, where do you go to find gold? First place you're going to go is someplace where somebody already found it. You're guaranteed that there's going to still be some there. The old timers only got 50% of the gold, that there's still half as much as they pulled out still out here in the mountains.
They didn't even scratch the surface. Didn't even scratch the surface.
Shake it back and forth. That's it. Okay, now start tipping it forward a little bit. See how those little rocks just float right off? Because they're light. There we go. We shake all the heavy stuff back down to the bottom. The kids absolutely love it. Just being out here and splashing around in the water.
I kind of liken it to fishing. You never know what you're going to find.
I already see one.
Every pan's got something different in it.
One little color there. You see how it's just yellow? There isn't anything else in the pan that color. The yellow stuff is definitely gold. And most everything else is, everything else isn't.
Gold.
Full of water, there you go. Flatten it out a little bit, back to you, there you go, good. Oh, look at that, oh, look at that, hey. Wait a minute, look at this. There's one there, another one there. You got some, let's see, you got some nice little pieces in there. That's a good pan. All right, good job.
That's very good color.
It's addictive. I want to see if I can find one maybe a little bit bigger or find one to match it. 7
years ago, I found the nugget that I wear as an earring, and I'm still looking for the match set.
It's like adventure. You may go home after the end of the day completely skunked, and other times you may come home with quite a bit of gold.
The gold's the icing on the cake.
It's the chase. It's the thrill of the chase.
It's easy to see how the fever sets in, and it was so strong for some of the first miners in Idaho, it led them to crime. In 1863, there was one report of 50 murders in just 2 months. So 1 year later, this penitentiary was built, the first in the entire territory, and by today's standards, it was hardly secure. This might be one reason why a board fence and 1 prison guard, all that kept the prisoners inside.
Call him the last of Idaho's pioneers, or just call him crazy. Whatever you choose, you won't want to miss Idaho's only caveman.
If you once live in a cave, you don't want to live in nothing else.
It took a unique brand of person to live the miner's life. Most men built their own homes, blacksmithed their own tools, and in case of injury, treated their own wounds. It was by no means an easy existence. For proof, just take a walk through the Idaho City Cemetery. Out of about 200 grave sites, only about 20 people died of natural causes. But hundreds more thrived, and it's interesting to note that hardy mining spirit lives on. Exploring Idaho's Jennifer Eisenhart joins us now.
Can you imagine what that was like, being completely self-sufficient?
I really can't.
Well, recently we met a man who still today embodies that hard-working spirit. Richard Zimmerman has carved out a niche for himself. You might call his place along the Salmon River kind of a hole in the wall, but Richard Zimmerman proudly calls it home. Richard Zimmerman is one of the last in these parts to live off the land. It's hard work, but he likes it that way, just like he prefers pumping his own water with the windmill he constructed himself.
It's quite a job to think that all up to how they'd make it.
He irrigates his large garden along the Salmon River and grows row after row of his own fresh food.
I have a funny diet. I can't eat everything. I eat vegetables and fruit, and cherries, and canned up applesauce fermented in my yogurt and stuff like that. These are carrots here, yeah. Well, I'd like to chew them, but I ain't got no teeth.
Maybe that's why Richard Zimmerman gave up eating meat years ago. Says it also bothers his stomach. So he tends to his vegetables, pulling up weeds with an old butter knife and some elbow grease.
Coming right into my carrots. Take over after a while if you don't. You better keep scratching the ground.
Over time, Richard Zimmerman has developed certain theories about things.
Hell no, I don't like preservatives. Rhubarb juice helps, but it ain't the answer to my problems. If you got bad stomach, garlic will just about fix it.
At 80 years old, he must be doing something right.
You won't be able to stand me.
You can't argue with any of it, because this is the way Richard Zimmerman does things around here, the way he likes it, with both hands working together and moving ahead, one small step at a time. After a while, those small steps have added up.
This is the house right here, first house I made years ago.
It was back in 1948, after Richard Zimmerman started his first garden, he got the idea to do a little improvement.
I had a tent way over here set up. I had a cable to put across the river, and I come across on the cable, and I brought the logs and everything in here to make this house, except the rocks. The rocks is already here.
With not much more than his own two hands, he first built a house for himself, and then another house, and another house. One structure at a time, he soon became the proud builder of a unique village.
Here's a house made out of slab wood. Got the sawmill, $10 house. Cost $10 to make it. Here's something. Made out of rubber tires, dirt pounded in the tires. You get the rubber tires for nothing, throw away.
Richard Zimmerman thinks people throw away too much good stuff.
I got beer cans holes with sticks in, all wired together. Well, this window I cut off an old pickup, I think it was, an old Chevy, I ain't sure what it was.
If Chevrolet only knew how versatile these cars can be.
This is my ventilator. Open up the air, let the air in. According to how much you want. I got another ventilator on the other side.
A recycling masterpiece, and from the outside, this whole place is an admirable achievement. But what makes Richard Zimmerman's handcrafted houses so very unique?
This is where I live in here.
Are the rooms he's etched out on the inside.
I said to myself, boy, this would make a good place to make a cave. There's a lot of big rocks around. I roll them up on the plank sometimes. Other times I'll bring them down, put mud behind. And I got the idea I'll make a mine out of it. Oh, heck, it's too good for a mine. I'll make a house out of it. Then I'll put a pantry there, right there. And then I'll make my bed in there. I put mud on top and paper and painted it. Made it pretty good. I kept it working. And then winter time, I got nothing to do. I'd make it a little bigger.
With a hammer and chisel, Richard Zimmerman tapped away the years. He ended up with the best dugout house this side of the Mississippi. There's a front room, a kitchen, a bedroom, and a back room.
This is where I cook right here. And this is my cupboard here. This is an old icebox for cupboard. I can step up on here to get in my bed. This is my tank right here. I make wine and cook with wine. This is something I made the other day here. It's made out of beets and stuff. I don't drink it. I just cook with it.
If ever a cave were cozy, this is it.
If you want to live in a cave, you don't want to live in nothing else. If you don't have to chop much wood. You don't have to have no air condition. It's about the same temperature all the time. It's hot outside, it's warm, it's cool in here. When it's cold out here, it's warm in here. So, you know, once you live in a cave, you get used to it. You don't want to live in something else.
He's up to 13 dugout houses now. Not one has electricity or running water. This hard-working caveman sees no need for those frills.
I'm coasting now.
After all, it's just a short bike ride down the road to his dugout refrigerator.
There's one of my ice caves here, a bigger one. And it's got natural ice in here. I had to build a fire to make it, take the rock out of here and put it back in again and stuff like that. And I'm walking on the ice back here. And you can skate on it if you had ice skates.
Even in the height of summer, his natural ice cave stays well below freezing.
It says 30. Here's my yogurt. This is what I eat. Now beets and carrots and raisins, a little flour, milk. Let's hit the spot, boy.
To Richard Zimmerman, life couldn't get much better than this. Until one day a funny thing happened. People started to wonder just exactly what this caveman was doing in here.
I tried to be a hermit, but it didn't turn out that way. Too many people started bothering me, so I had to start charging to go in here. Goodbye, okay.
$1 a piece, just to look inside.
I got $1.
Then newspaper reporters started writing stories. So Richard Zimmerman printed up postcards.
I sell them for 50 cents. I got 3 kinds of cards.
He charges $1 to take his picture, and he's even come up with his own slogan.
Got my brand on there, Dugout Dick, Ice Cave Brand.
After that, he put up road signs, and pretty soon, people from all over the world wanted to meet Dugout Dick for themselves.
Oh, yeah. Come from Europe. I had Japanese people, Indian people. I had a guy with the turbans on, he called it. I had one of them guys come in here. Another guy bring him in here. But I can't show you, the goat ate the roster up. You gotta watch your Bible too, show you the Bible too. I got a couple letters from Johnny Carson a long time ago, but I told him, heck, the show's up here, it ain't down there. I don't ride airplanes anyway. There's an old spinning wheel in the parlor. Yeah, I gotta do this for the tourists here. I try to entertain a little bit here. I can see a barefoot boy with his willow fishing pole.
But picking a guitar never took Dugout Dick quite as far as picking out rocks.
Oh, it goes back here about 100 feet.
So when he's not entertaining, Dugout Dick spends his days deep underground, expanding the edges of his empire.
Well, it's sure getting hard, this stuff, you see.
It's just the kind of thing Dugout Dick likes. With a hammer and chisel, his hands work together, digging deeper, one small chip at a time.
I've been digging since I come in here. That's been 48. I had to figure it out. How many years would that be? 48, I come in here. And, oh gosh, it wouldn't be 50 years yet. I don't think I ever want to live with anything else but this. Zechariah, he shall make a temple, and he shall bear the honor of it. See, I'm going to make a temple.
This is your temple?
This is a temple, part of it, yeah. I'll make another one here. Here's my goat.
And Richard Zimmerman rents out his dugouts to hikers and campers for the low, low price of $2 a night.
What a bargain.
And what an experience.
I would think so. We're going to show you a little bit later in the show how you too can rent one of his dugouts, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
Idaho's golden years are saved from the destructive hands of time. That story next on Exploring Idaho.
Welcome back to Exploring Idaho from Idaho City, where the gold rush was short-lived. When the gold ran out, so did the people, and the years that followed wore the buildings into a shambles. The same is true for most Idaho gold rush towns, and few have recovered as well as Idaho City. Take a look at the Sluice Box secondhand store. It's the perfect example of a business capitalizing on the abundance of memorabilia from the past. Across our state, that passion for the past is proving as valuable as gold. High in the mountains of central Idaho, the gold rush is long gone. But here, where the Yankee Fork of the Salmon River cuts through this valley, remains a wealth of Idaho history.
It was the most popular gold mining camp for a long time in the Idaho Territory.
The town of Custer was rich during the gold rush. 100 buildings lined Main Street, and more than 600 people called Custer home. The constantly operating General Custer Mill employed almost every man in town, and business was good. But like many gold rush towns, the boom was short-lived, and in the early 1900s, Custer went bust. Now, 100 years later, the town of Custer is making a comeback. Log cabins are being restored. The Custer General Store is again open for business. And the old schoolhouse is now a mining museum.
When you do walk in, hopefully you can step back, say 100 years or 120 years, and you get a feel for what it would have been like living here and carrying on day to day.
Artifacts of the gold rush have been collected and put on display. Turn-of-the-century tables are set. There's old clothing and old mining tools. Every artifact contains the flavor of those very difficult times.
This is the McKenzie House. It was reputed in Custer to be the finest home which existed. The McKenzies were well-to-do business folks in Custer. They decorated the home and created one that was the envy of a lot of people in the town.
By modern standards, this 4-room log cabin may seem modest, but imagine packing a piano on a horse-drawn wagon and hauling it into these mountains. Simple things to us today were then a sign of luxury.
You try to think back like it would be in 1880, 1890, along in there, and it's really hard to imagine what they, what they really had to live, their living conditions and all.
GLEN Southwick volunteers for the Custer Museum.
How are you guys today?
I'm fine. We're doing great. How are you?
He thinks it's important for visitors to understand the people and the times of the gold rush.
You know, I think our kids, our grandkids need to know the heritage that they've come into, and I think it's important to preserve, keep some of these old things.
Little things like this relaxing log rocker that soothed a miner after a hard day's work. Or remnants of old wagons, the only transportation into the town. Or reminders of how truly hard it was to make a living with the heavy tools of the mining trade.
I'm sure it would have been nothing but tough.
But for visitors, it's easy to see why this restored gold town is so valuable to Idaho's history. It seems the history of Idaho's gold rush is almost as rich as the rush itself. More recently, machinery took over for the old shovel and handpick. This diesel-powered gold dredge was fired up along the Yankee Fork in 1940. It was rigged like a boat and floated on a pool of water while it worked. A huge line of iron buckets dug 25 feet below the earth in the search for gold. The dredge operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Between 1940 and 1952, the dredge recovered just over $1 million worth of gold. Today, it sits empty, except to tourists who can walk through the massive machine on historical tours. And now for today's Idaho Puzzler. Can you guess the amount of gold that was pulled out of the Boise Basin by the year 1865? In 1865 dollars, was it 25,000, 25 million, or 250 million? We'll have the answer to our Idaho puzzler when Exploring Idaho returns. Could you guess the amount of gold that was mined out of the Boise Basin by the year 1865? In 1865 dollars, it was $250 million. If you'd like more information about any of the stories you've seen in our show today, call for a copy of the Exploring Idaho Field Notes. Be sure to ask for show number 138. It took a lot of courage for prospectors and their families to settle in these rugged mountains. Their tradition of hard work and their hope for a better life is what shaped the state of Idaho. We leave you today with a look back at the founders of our state. We'll see you again next time on the next edition of Exploring Idaho.